Make it to the happy hour tonight, 7:30. Right now, I'm going to get started. I'm going to present on something called More Bad Ideas. And this is going to be a quick, maybe 20-minute presentation. Then we're bringing our first keynote speaker on stage after this, and then we'll have a short break after that. So this is the title chapter of a new book I'm writing on creativity. I work with companies not just on social media, but it's a big passion point of mine is working with companies on making businesses and teams more creative. I'll come in and run a brainstorm. I'll come in and help an HR department or an EVP with company culture to make it more creative. So on the smallest level, on one project, and on the largest level, an entire organization. And my modus operandi for all of that is I think most people are under the false assumption that you can't teach yourself to become more creative, that you're kind of born with a certain amount of creativity. I'm a firm believer that anyone can be more creative. There's a system to it. You can learn it. There's a few easy steps, one of which we're going to go through today, that can really make you more creative. And if you kind of own that mentality, you will find that in your projects, you will have better results, more creative results, and a larger number of results that you can pull from. So this is a really favorite quote of mine, talking about businesses. And businesses are really built, if the metaphor is a ship is your business, you build it to go out to sea, to either explore or to plunder or whatever it is. You go out to get stuff and find stuff and succeed. And most companies, once they've done that, they come back to harbor, they come back to a safe place, and they stay there. A ship stuck in harbor is not really what a ship's supposed to be doing. So the best example of this is Blockbuster Video. Blockbuster Video was an amazing, massive company that really killed their sector, and then they really were that ship staying in harbor. They were safe, but that's not where they were built for, and they stayed in harbor too long, and Netflix murdered them, right? Ate them for lunch. So there's a lot of great examples of this. One of the things I'm talking about today is risk tolerance, is to have a little bit more tolerance for stupid ideas, silly ideas, ideas that really broaden your mindset. So that's kind of the overall theme. Now, when I say risk tolerance, I'm not talking about the startup mentality of break things, move fast, fail forward, like Facebook and a lot of startups believe. I don't really believe in that. What I'm talking about is creativity at the beginning of the process, internally having a risk tolerance with your fellow employees, with the culture within your company, within the meetings, and being able to really expand the possibilities in those meetings. Who knows who this is? Oh, that's great. Jeff Staple. Jeff Staple is a designer, went to Parsons School of Design at the New School in New York City. I say went there because he did not graduate. He dropped out to start his own fashion brand. He was making T-shirts for his friends. And he really started from scratch in the Lower East Side of New York City, this urban fashion design brand that took off. A lot of people in New York went crazy over it. He was very successful at a very young age as a college dropout, which his parents did not appreciate very much at first. And he had this opportunity come onto his plate where Nike approached him to design a shoe. So Nike came to Jeff, said, we want you to design an urban kind of street culture shoe for us. At the time, sneakers, this was around 2004, sneakers were really skateboarding shoes. Today, sneakers are more basketball shoes. But it was a skateboarding shoe. It was Nike's Dunk series, which is an ironic name for a skateboarding shoe, I know. But Jeff said, yeah, I'd love to, of course. And he had this idea in the back of his head that he'd been wanting to do for a while. He loved fashion brands that had animals attached to them, whether it's a moose or a bear or a deer, an alligator, right? But he was always fascinated that all the good animals were taken, so he wanted to do a pigeon. Being from New York City, pigeons are everywhere, right? It's a big symbol of the city, but in a negative way for the most part. So much so that at the time he was doing this, there was a war on pigeons in London. This is a BBC article. You don't have to read the whole thing, just a few key words: gutter birds, flying ashtrays, rats of the sky, infested. These are the typical responses people would have of pigeons, right? So when he told his friends, I want to design a shoe for Nike and model it after a pigeon, everyone had really good response that it was a terrible idea, universally a terrible idea. Everyone he asked, right? So Jeff did what anybody would do with all that great advice, and he went ahead with it anyways. Ignored everyone. So this is the shoe. This is the Pigeon Dunk series from 2004. They sold for around $200. There were 300 of them made. Nike gave 100 of them to Jeff. You can see the gray tones and the pink tones are kind of modeled after the pigeon. The big thing was that it was named after a pigeon, had a pigeon on it, and they weren't sure if that was going to really work. Jeff knew it was going to work in his head. Everybody else didn't really, but he ran with it anyways. And what happened is it was the first official sneaker riot. This was when people were not camping out for shoes like they do for iPhones or like they do today for new sneakers that come out. People will put tents up and camp out for the first 100 shoes of Kanye's new shoe or whatever it is, right? Any sneakerheads in the audience? A couple of you? So highly collectible shoes were just beginning to become a thing. So this shoe that everybody thought was a bad idea became one of the biggest hits ever for kind of custom special edition shoes. New York Post front page, nightly news, people showed up that tried to rob the people coming out of the store from the shoes. So these kids mostly were camping out to get the shoes. The police had to show up, NYPD showed up to protect everyone, get them out of the back of the store, put them in a taxi so they were safe. But it was on all the news channels as the first sneaker riot, basically. Jeff has gone on to grow his brand tremendously. It's still very much attached to the pigeon symbol. It's not everything they design, but the pigeon is a symbol that reoccurs quite a lot on staple design. You've seen their clothing, probably. It's a worldwide global brand now. This is LeBron James wearing one of their patterned shirts. So very successful. That shoe really launched them into the echelon of urban design, streetwear design that they are today. And Jeff has become, a fashion leader, not just in kind of the urban category. I interviewed Jeff for my book. One of the things he told me is that he was able to do this. He was able to listen to all the advice that told him not to do this, that it was a bad idea, because he really trusted his instinct, his own internal kind of core design instinct. And he said, when you've been doing something long enough, like I had, at the time he had been 6 years into his business, about 5 or 6 years, and he had a lot of confidence in his own ability. He said, when you've been doing this long enough, you get used to people calling you an idiot, right? And he's able to have enough confidence in his own creativity to get past that. We don't all have that in everything we do, but that's something to keep in mind. If you're very confident in something and you have the experience, believe in yourself to run with it sometimes. Since then, pigeons have really gone in the last, if you go back and look at kind of commercial archives, last 10 to 15 years, they've gone from a very negative, seldom used cultural symbol to a much more, not completely all the way positive, but there have been commercials from Geico, from FedEx, from beer companies, soda companies that have used pigeons in a very positive light as a symbol of grit and stick-to-itiveness and getting it done and kind of surviving however you can, especially in New York City. That makes a lot of sense. This is my favorite commercial. This is from JetBlue.
The most annoying thing about flying? The treatment. It's like I'm some huge inconvenience. Well, excuse me for wanting a little attention. I mean, am I completely invisible? Well, you don't see that every day.
Enjoy JetBlue's award-winning customer service.
That is not a paid advertisement from JetBlue. I love JetBlue, though, so free advertisement for them. They've got a couple more of those. I recommend going on YouTube and looking at them. So bad ideas, how can you use them? There's a little fog over here moving in on me. Bad ideas, how can you use them? I'm going to give you what I think is a rare thing, which is the true shortcut in the world. Most shortcuts are not real shortcuts. I believe that bad ideas are a true shortcut to innovation. And I'm going to walk you through why I think that exists. We're going to do, first, why bad ideas work for you, in what way they benefit you. Now, we're talking about in the creative process. You don't want to produce a bad idea at the end of the creative process. You want it to be at the beginning of the creative process to get you to an amazing idea. So, bad ideas work because sometimes they're actually a good idea. This is the pigeon dunk shoe. It was actually a good idea, but not many people saw it. Bad ideas work because they lead to good ideas. They are a connection point. Bad idea A leads to weird idea B, leads to amazing idea C, right? They are augmenting other ideas. They help you combine more things. They broaden things that you can connect in a brainstorm meeting, for instance. They also open your mind. When you start to think of a bad idea, this is connected to the next one. You can't think of a really bad idea without thinking of a really great idea. You don't even know what bad is unless the back of your brain is thinking what great is, right? So when you start thinking about really bad ideas, you're broadening the space that your brain is considering for opportunities. And then lastly, this is probably the biggest benefit. When I sit you down for a brainstorm meeting, or when I tell people that work for a company that you're allowed to come up with bad ideas, or I need you to come up with bad ideas, the pressure for that is so much less. If I sit you down and I say, Mary, I need 3 amazing world-class solutions to this problem in the next 10 minutes. Go ahead and work on that. Get it back to me, please. That's a high-pressure situation. That's like your brain is going to freeze because every idea needs to be amazing. If I say, Mary, I really need the worst, terrible ideas from you, the ones that would make us lose the client, that would crash the server, that would endanger children, right? Those are the ideas that you can start writing right away, and they will just flow, right? So that's probably the biggest benefit of bad ideas. But think about that. Think about the range of it opening your brain, and think about the benefit of taking the pressure off people in a brainstorm or a creative culture situation. So how to come up with bad ideas, 4 steps. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Jason, I'm already really good at coming up with bad ideas. I think you can do better, so we're going to give you some process. Number 1 is to define bad ideas. I require bad ideas in my brainstorm meetings. Everybody can come up with a bad idea, but if you define it, it really helps more bad ideas flow. It really helps a higher number of ideas to be generated. My belief is that when you think about bad ideas, you have 2 categories. You kind of have 2 handholds, and one of them is absurd and the other is obvious. Between those, thinking about those 2 handholds is a lot of great opportunity for brilliant ideas. But if you remember only one thing, bad ideas are somewhere in between, or in 2 categories, either the absurd or the obvious. The obvious is pretty easy. These are the ideas that we think are a little too boring, a little too simple. Everyone else has already thought of them. And because of that, we don't want to feel like we're the stupid person in the room and saying something that everyone else has in their brain. First of all, it's not true. They've done studies of brainstorm meetings where everybody has the same prompt, different groups of people, same moderator, and sometimes 60% of the ideas that come up from the different groups are completely different than the other groups. So your obvious is not someone else's obvious. So obvious is easy. Absurd is where things get more fun, where you want to spend a little more time. Things that are too expensive, we reviewed this a little bit. Things that are too dangerous, too far from reality, too high a cost from the budget. Again, one of my favorites is dangerous to children. That's an actual example that resulted in a great idea for someone, an agency I know. There was a pitch of something that really would endanger children. I think it was something about being flammable. And that led to something else, A to B to C connection point, that was really great and resulted for them well and won them a client. This is my solution if you run out of ideas. This is a website I started. If you don't like the cursing, I apologize. I need a new fucking idea.com. It basically just gives you prompts for when you get stuck. There's over 150 prompts in there that we've written that I really like. If you don't like long URLs, there's a shorter version. And quick example, you go there, would a clever hashtag work? That didn't fucking work, give me something else. Just click that button over and over. Don't do it now, but later when you need to kill an hour. It's really fun. All right, so this is very simple. Rule number 2. Require bad ideas, and require them as the first thing in any brainstorm meeting. Sit down, start brainstorming, start with bad ideas. Don't just ask for them, require them. The first things people have to put down on paper are bad ideas. They need to put 10 per person. Do it before the meeting, however you want, but start by requiring bad ideas. That's the way to do it. If you add it in after there's already good ideas on the table, it screws up our heads. Trust me, start with bad ideas. It's a huge step. Number 3, encourage a what-if mentality within your company, within your meetings. This is the anything goes. This is the what if followed by a bad idea. What if we made it flammable? What if we spent all of our budget on Snickers bars for the year, right? What if, whatever you want. Now, this is easier to do in a meeting than it is in a company culture. Inside a company culture, you really need to push it to the highest level of your leadership that has to embrace this for it to work. Because if you're afraid of the EVP or the CEO thinking what you're suggesting to your coworker is really stupid, you're not going to have that casual conversation about bad ideas in the workplace, which can really help ideas flow outside of meetings. A great example of what-if culture is Airbnb. Airbnb actually launched their company 3 times. They're famous for saying, we launched it once, nobody noticed, launched it twice, nobody noticed still, so we launched it again. And now they're competing, in fact, outperforming many of the largest hotel brands in the world today. But at one of those starting points, they were really struggling. They really needed money, and they decided a really good way to make money would be to get new users. Makes sense. How do we get new users? Let's make cereal boxes, this was 2008, themed for the election, and send them to technology bloggers, send them to TechCrunch and everybody else, and try to get them to blog about us because of these crazy cereal boxes. I mean, I guess it's kind of related, bed and breakfast. I don't really know. I don't know. It wasn't a great idea. It didn't work at all. In fact, when they were making the boxes by hand, one of the co-founders is famous for saying, I bet Zuckerberg never had to glue cereal boxes together and fold cereal boxes by hand. And then after that, the end of that quote is, this is probably a really bad idea. And he was right, it was. It did not work. Nobody covered them from this. So they were in a very big sticking point. They had all these cereal boxes. They hadn't gotten rid of all of them. They'd spent a little bit of money making them, so now they were worse off than they started. So they said, what do we do? Let's double down on this bad idea. Let's sell these cereal boxes for $40 each as a collectible. It turns out that that idea was not as terrible as it first sounds. They sold out of the cereal boxes. They made 30 grand off of the cereal boxes, and they funded their business for 4 or 5 months, kept them alive. It actually impressed somebody in a pitch meeting that was kicking them out so much that it led to them getting more funding. So really bad idea, a strange double down on a bad idea that really, really worked. And there's a great podcast interview about that. It's all over the web if you want to read more about that story. I really love that example. So step 4 is to save bad ideas. So, and this is for all ideas, but I think it's really useful for bad ideas because at the end of a lot of brainstorms, you have typically an idea that you really love. I call them the unicorns of the meeting. Instead of like a thoroughbred you know is going to work, it's a unicorn, you really love it, but it probably is a little too unrealistic. Probably won't work for one reason or another. Those are the ideas you want to save because you will figure them out the next time. Most of us have repeated creative problems. Agencies have to pitch clients over and over. Maybe you do Facebook campaigns 4 times a year. Maybe you do a contest every year for Christmas, right? We have these repeated creative problems, and if you save these bad ideas that you've had that you really loved from previous times that you've attempted to solve these problems, coming back to them puts you in an amazing space where you have even more to work with. A great example of this is Spotify. So Spotify is the example of someone that does their biggest ad campaign every year around Christmas. It's usually an out-of-home billboard campaign, some type of big advertising spend. And they're also famous for doing a lot of digital stats, music stats within their marketing. So you'll go to their Facebook page and they'll be talking about a celebrity just died, or a celebrity just showed up on a reality show, or someone won an award, and they show the arc of how that music from that person skyrockets because of that response. Or they show the most popular songs at Christmas and the data behind that and how it changes year to year. And it's really interesting data marketing, content marketing. So they kind of combined that with this project, and they had a bad idea that they didn't go with in 2015, which was they really wanted to feature individual users' weird listening habits, right? So for instance, they might, the mayor of Orlando is Buddy, right? So they might have a billboard that says, Buddy listened to, Hanson's greatest hits 200 times last year, right? Something very personal to the area, something very funny, but maybe a little too personal, like calling out an individual. And even if they anonymized it, they were a little worried at the time that the stigma of using user data to market themselves in that way might be a little weird. So what they did, the creative director of Spotify saved that bad idea. 2016 comes around, they have another Christmas campaign. He pulls that one out of the archives, talks to his fellow creatives about it, talks to the team about it, and they really feel like they solved the issues they had with it. They feel like they got ahead of the privacy issue, and that wouldn't be a concern. They feel like they had done a good job kind of not making that an issue overall in their company, and they thought they had really nailed some of the creative challenges that they were stuck on before. So they saved that idea, they came back to it, and this is their result. They had a series of billboards. Dear person who played sorry 42 times on Valentine's Day, what did you do? And then it's been weird was the tagline for 2016. Thanks, 2016. Another one. Dear 3,749 people who streamed It's the End of the World as We Know It the day after the Brexit vote, or day of the Brexit vote, hang in there. And then one of my favorites, dear person in South Williamsburg, that's Brooklyn, for folks that don't know, who played Cold Water 6 times on the hottest day of the year. We see what you did there. These were so successful that it actually became a massive social media hit. Even though these were out-of-home billboards, they got photographed and tweeted and put on Instagram more than almost anything they had ever done. It was by far their most successful advertising campaign. And it wouldn't have happened if they hadn't saved that original bad idea and come back to it. All right, so to wrap up, there's a phrase that we say at a lot of beginning of a lot of brainstorming meetings, which is there's no such thing as a bad idea. I call complete bullshit on that. Everyone knows a bad idea when they hear it, when they see it, right? And you're judging it, whether you're not allowed to say it out loud or not, you're judging it right away. So the key to it is not to ignore bad ideas or pretend like you don't know what they are, but to recognize bad ideas exist and learn how to use them. We're not taught how to use them. Take this system and learn how to use them. So define bad ideas, require bad ideas, cultivate a what-if culture, and save your bad ideas. And really, in general, get rid of there's no such thing as bad ideas and just learn how to use them more in your creative process at the beginning, and you will have amazing results. I challenge you to do this, and I thank you for your time.